Thanks for tuning in to Gin and Tantra, Spirituality with a Twist. You have Daniel running the ship today. So if you're used to Eric driving, I don't know, we call it the mothership, or maybe it's a boat. I don't know, a flying city, perhaps. It will be piloted by yours truly, and I have zero navigation, and I don't know how to use the controls. So hopefully we won't crash and burn. But I feel very confident in our co-pilots that we have with us today. Remy has been on with us before, and we are finally joined, long overdue, by his lovely wife, Ashley. And we're going to be discussing their work with the medicine, their center Kumankaya down just outside of Tulum, and a whole bunch of other things that, you know, are related to the medicine work. So I wanted to say thank you guys for coming on. If you would say hello to our audience.
Thank you for having us, and hello to everybody. Hello from Mexico.
There we go.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
No, thanks for coming on. And truth be told, we've been trying to do this with you guys for a little bit now. The last few weeks, we've been kind of playing cat and mouse. So it's you know, it's good to have it on. And as you know, most of our audiences have heard, and probably some people who you guys know who've listened to us as well. Remy's been on a couple times, and so you know, we've been over our history a little bit. We have a good, you know, really very good relationship, us and with my partner Bridget. You know, so we do wonderful work together. So I'm very happy to have you guys on, and yeah, you know, so there's that. Also, just briefly before we begin, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's tuning in today, whether today is the first time that you've listened to us, or you know, you got referred to us by somewhere, or you've been listening for a long time. We do appreciate all the people who tune in and who send us feedback. I'll leave links to Ashley and Remy's website in the description of the podcast. And you could certainly find them that way. Or if you want to contact me personally and you know, you have a different question or something like that, feel free to hit me up at ginandtantra@gmail.com, or via Instagram at ginandtantra, or leave a comment in the YouTube video, or even a review on Apple Podcasts. I figure we get that out of the way now. Anyway, so thanks everybody for tuning in. All right, so we want to talk today about the medicine and your guys' work together. You guys have worked for, you know, many years to build a wonderful center that, you know, we've been to before and will be coming again, and hope to do so for many years. And it's, you know, I only know the stories that you guys tell me, but it's thousands of hours of labor, and it's definitely a labor of love and an outpouring of your heart. You know, it's a desire to kind of help people in this life via the medium that has been helpful for you. And given that, I wanted to start at the beginning. Not that we're going to go through the entire story of your life or everything else like that, but the beginning of you guys' journey with the medicine. So at some point, you, like many of our listeners, were newbies and have never tasted the bitter brew of the Amazon. And you were, something in your heart or your souls called to you and said, drink me, you know. And so I wanted to hear from, you know, a little bit from each of you guys on what it was that called you to it, and also what it was that got you over the hump. Because I think for people who've never done it before, and even if you have, there's always a bit of apprehension. Even if you feel like this is the right thing to do, there's still some obstacles, if you will, in the way. And so I wanted to hear how you guys fared in the beginning, and you know, then we can dive in more from there.
Yeah, so for me, it has started like many other people, and in a very, very, very normal way, that from books and some documentaries, it has just triggers my curiosity about it. And over 12 years ago, I tried the medicine for the first time. And I didn't know yet at this time that something was in it for me. You know, it was just out of curiosity. I was using the experience of the ayahuasca as a self-discovery tool, not necessarily as a healing tool first. It was just by mere curiosity. And the first time I went into the second time I went to Peru, it was really when 11 years ago, something has shifted. I had like a ceremony, which I can qualify it as the very first ceremony, because that was really the true one, where the whole vision that I had explained me that was my path, and I was waited on this path. And so, if you like, that's when I received the call for it. And so that's when my life was starting to change. And I saw a whole vision of the spirit of the plant. They were like calling for me, waiting for me, and even for years. And that's when everything has changed, and my whole paradigm of my life, in fact, my entire paradigm has changed, you know. And so it was challenging, because it was just not a healing process, but it was a call to have a way of life, a new way of life. And so it was challenging in those terms.
Yeah. Nice. Ashley?
So I guess my journey started a little over 8 years ago. And well, I could take it back even further. So about 10 years ago, I finally decided that I wasn't happy with my life. I couldn't quite understand why. I didn't understand what was going on. I had everything I wanted, everything I'd worked for, the house, the job. I was doing very well in those things, but I had no joy in my life. I had no connection to what life that I had. And so I started this journey, went to Nepal, went to Tibet, went to these different places, trying to find something to bring life to me, the life force, the connection, like, yeah, exactly, the connection. And finally a friend asked me, he said, I'm going to go down to Peru and drink ayahuasca. Are you interested in coming? I thought, that's so interesting, because I just, ayahuasca had come on my radar a little bit that previous 6 months. I've been reading about it and kind of seeing it pop up, and it had provoked my curiosity. And so it kind of synchronized at the same time where I realized that I need to stop looking on the outside, that it really was like, I need to start dealing with the inside, right? And so I went down there for that purpose, to try to connect to my life, to find my joy, to find my enthusiasm and passion again for life. And so I had a little bit more of a healing intention, curiosity for sure. I've always been interested in ethnogens, right? But yeah, going down there, just trying to find something to shake the tree a little bit to help me. And it was my second ayahuasca ceremony, and I thought, oh my gosh, the healing potentiality of this medicine is incredible. And I was there for 10 days for the first time. And after the second night, I committed to come back the next summer for 2 months, because I thought, okay, this is not even scratching the surface. In fact, I need to come back and delve really deeply into myself, because a lot of the experience here at Kumankaya and also in Peru is you're in isolation 90% of the time. So you're really faced to kind of deal with yourself. And up until that point in time, I really never gave myself space to face myself, to deal with myself, And so I also looked at it as an opportunity to do this as well, with the help of extremely, extremely proficient healers.
And if you like, in fact, we met in the medicine. And so for us, it was a slow but natural evolution to be nowadays here in Mexico, creating our own proper retreat center and working with the medicine. I was slightly a bit more advanced in the past. I was already dedicated to the path when we met. And she was, in fact, even more enthusiastic than I when she started to commit to it. And so that became a natural evolution for us. It wasn't at all a struggle. It became part of our life very fast, not necessarily easily, but very fast. And that was how we became something that we dedicate ourselves 100%. That we do here at our place. We work 10 months out of 12. We drink 4 times a week. So it's a full commitment, 100% full commitment. Yeah.
There's a, I don't have it with me and it's in the other room. I can't get it, but my teacher, who's a yogi, he's a Tibetan Buddhist, a Vajrayana practitioner, but he's a yogi in a sense, somebody who's not in society, they're around society, they're in it, but they're not, like you guys. He wears whatever he wants to wear, always cotton clothing, never anything artificial. He always has his rings on. He always has the malas with him. He looks like he's a monk, because he is a monk, but on the introduction to some of the prayers, they'll have you do this reading beforehand, and it'll say in the beginning, you'll recognize the path, and it will take a seed in your life, and eventually that seed will grow into a plant and take priority in your life, and then you will fashion your life in a way that it has the primary focus of your existence, and all the other things work around it. And as you guys kind of just briefly alluded to, the way in which you've grown over the years into this path, it seems like that kind of is what happened, for y'all, So, okay. So thank you guys for sharing. I guess, Ashley, the only question I had, and Remy, the only question I have is like, was there any apprehension that you guys had before the first time? And if it's not, and if you had done other psychedelics before and you were like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll try it because I love trying things, but either drinking the medicine or doing some other kind of psychedelic for the first time, did you have apprehension, and how did you deal with that? Because maybe there might be people who are listening who are wanting to try, maybe they heard some documentaries or this podcast, or Ashley, like yourself, they're just kind of like looking for different things and there's sort of a natural calling. Like, how did you guys deal with it for yourself? And then how would you say for other people who are interested, how to deal with that kind of bridging the gap between the desire and the actuality of making it happen?
So for sure, I would say, Daniel, that having no fears and no anticipation would be absolutely
Abnormal.
or non-human,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And for many years, I was just thinking it's natural fears, of the person. And but now I have a different perspective on it. I really do believe that medicine is so intelligent with our own bodies that the bodies, even without even trying it the first time, knows already what's ahead. Mm-hmm. And there's this like premonition of what the medicine contain that makes you having this kind of terror. I would almost say like sacred terror, a terror of like, okay, if I do that, I may have to change my life.
Mm.
And so at first, the taking the medicine is frightening because it's what we call nowadays, it's really common to say it's a psychedelic healing. But there's a phase after that, that if we keep practicing with the medicine, it becomes an existential healing. And this existential healing, you cannot do it like just on the same day.
No.
It's something that's going to take over your entire life. And that's why this fear is most of the time growing into the people, because there's this almost unconscious knowledge of what's ahead.
Mm.
If I make sense.
Yeah.
It's almost a spiritual instinct.
Mm. And Ashley, for yourself?
Yeah, I would say there was a very normal amount of fear. I had previous experience with psychedelics, and so it was something I was extremely interested in. I always had extremely profound insights, and it was just always an experience that added to me, right? And so I'm really, really interested in going down and trying it. But I was also at a place, and it was a very beautiful place to be for myself, where I had nothing to lose. I was 35. I had lived in my life through my wounds and kind of through my pain, built myself through that way. And I knew that this wasn't all life had to offer. And so I was at a place where I'll try anything because I want to start really living fully. I want to start experiencing a beautiful life, my life, and at least enjoying the gifts I've been given, the blessings I've been given in my life. And so I would say, of course, I had fear. I even remember one ceremony where, like, it was like the first night, and I thought, "What am I doing? Like, if something goes wrong, there's nobody here to save you. What am I doing?" That kind of an idea on a physiological level. But like Remy said, I think it is more resistance and more fear as resistance. It was where I thought you should be doing this, but I kind of pushed through that, and I really had nothing to lose. I didn't want to keep on living the way I was living,
And what I would like to say also to those who are listening to us and listening to this podcast is that, I mean, fear is absolutely natural. But do we want to live our life out of fear?
Right.
Do we want to try to face it once and for all, as long as it takes, to be able to gain a little bit of ground on this pressure that fear has on our lives, Mm-hmm. And in fact, for us, for Ashley and I, it was very important because the whole decision that we took, the leap of faith and decision we took to come down here in Mexico and create our center, it was the only thing what has provided us to do it was fear of failure, fear of whatever, fear. And we decided at some point, we realized, we're like, hey, do we want to take decision out of fear, let fear lead our life, or do we want to step over our own fears and try to see what's beyond it, We do believe that fear is just a gateway for more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Know how to go through the fire of fear.
Yeah. And for people who don't know this, Ashley, you left a very kind of coveted teaching position that most people work their whole careers to get, correct?
Yeah, I had just received tenure, in fact, which I'd worked pretty hard to achieve up until that point. I received tenure in January and resigned in March. And so it was, we thought we were crazy a little bit, but
And also, I think it's important, we have all problems. Everybody has problems. Personal, existential, family, whatever. We have problem, addiction problem, blockage. I mean, the solution of the problems are not in the limit of our natural rationality. We have to push the boundary of the natural rationality to be able to look our blind angles, to look our weakness, our fears, to be able to find solutions. Our mind as is will not provide the way out, the ticket, the way out of our existential situation, whatever it is that we're going through right now. It's by pushing those boundaries that we find some different perspective and also different understanding.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I teach this shamanic course that this shamanic journey and course that I've been teaching for many years. I don't know, 8 years, maybe 9 years or something like that. And, in the class we use drumming. That's the kind of the to change the sort of perspective, to push as you say, pushing the boundaries of rationality. And what I will say to people is that if there was a question that you could answer with your rational mind, then you would have already answered it. And so when we're looking for new perspective, you have to take a different approach. And that different approach, it doesn't necessarily, we're talking about using the medicine in this, or working with the medicine in this scenario. So that's the approach that we're taking. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that's the only one. But it's not residing within your current stream of awareness, because if it was, you would have already resolved whatever issue it was that was at hand, So we kind of have to lean ourselves onto something else that is going to give us an opportunity, to take a different perspective. And for me, this is the opportunity that you guys are providing. And I think uniquely so, actually, in today's world, because you guys you're from where everybody else is from. You guys are westernized people. Yes, Remy is from France. Ashley's from Southern Illinois. Like, okay, yes, we know that's fine. But those are westernized places. And most of the people who we're engaging with are westernized people who we're trying to help them shift their perspective. And for me, there's a couple reasons that, and we'll get into the specifics of your guys' place and how you guys work and stuff like that in just a minute. But for me, just as somebody who is knowing you guys and work with you guys, and I take retreat, and I like to bring people on retreats, all various types of retreats, but specifically with you guys for the sake of this podcast, is because there's a couple things that are important. Like Asha, you mentioned this, right? A desire to give yourself space, right? Which is something that you mentioned for yourself. You wanted to go for a longer period, which you guys offer, and we'll talk about that. But even if it is just for the week or 10 days that most people come to see you guys for, it's not a quote unquote vacation, right? It is not. It's work. It's not labor work. You're not going to be building fences or something like this, but it's psycho-emotional, energetic work in order to get through this kind of darkness of the tunnel that people might feel like that they're in, or that they're just curious about looking into, right? So number one, so giving yourself space. And then I think, Remy, what you said similarly was also very pertinent, is that like you're overcoming this kind of sacred terror, is the words that you used, but it's not necessarily the sacred terror of like, oh my God, what is this going to do to me? What's going to happen? It's the terror around our habituated mind's resistance to changing, and like major changing. It doesn't necessarily mean leaving your job or divorcing your partner or selling your children. I mean, renting, or wait, you can't do that either. Whatever. But you're not leaving your life wholesale, but it might mean the letting go of a 20-year addiction, which could be to cigarettes or marijuana or, I don't know, masturbation. I don't know, whatever it is, but those things have residence inside of us. And I say residence with the CE and residence with the TS, because they live with us as those patterns live with us almost as entities, if you will, right? And so they have their own energies and processes that are always needing to be fed. And when we change the relationship with them, we're changing ourselves, you know. And I think there is a resistance to do that, even if there is a desire to do so initially, you know. And so
it's exactly that, Daniel, you know, because I would emphasize in this way that we all have our stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Interact with ourselves. I call them mental tracks. Mental tracks that we are all, the CDs on skip, mental tracks like that. Keep going on the same. And that's what essentially blocks from the content around us, you know. It's and so when we block ourselves by those mental tracks, you know, that's when our life gets done. Our life gets done. And the nature, I mean, the finest achievement of the intelligence of nature, you can find it in the experience of ayahuasca. Because it's an emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, it's an energetical intelligence. It can be sometimes, in some special cases, a spiritual intelligence that is here waiting for us to take us out of those mental tracks, stories we tell ourselves, and to show us life in a broader perspective.
And that's what's interesting about these ethnogens, is their consciousness is expanding. So they broaden our understanding, they broaden our awareness, they make us think differently, they make us see the world differently, they make us see ourselves differently.
Experience
ourselves differently. And that's why these medicines are such assets to our healing, is they help us be differently, think differently.
I think they really are the key of a greater self-discovery. You can do therapies, you can do any type of therapies or practices, but those the medicine and the ayahuasca, the way it works, it's the best self-discovery tool I've ever found in my life. And I look around a little bit. So,
all right, so we'll kind of shift gears here. All right, so we've kind of established, you know, how you guys kind of got started in terms of your own journey and where it's led you, you know, here. And let's discuss, like, all right, so someone who's listening to this podcast, maybe they've never been to your place before, or they've never done the medicine before, or maybe both. Maybe they've never been on retreat, right? And have never done any kind of psychedelic anything or whatever. How can we how can you guys describe to them like what they would be, you know, maybe not what they would be working on, but, you know, what are some of the things that you guys provide down there? What does a stay look like with you guys? And, you know, why would someone choose to come, other than the obvious multiple podcasts that Remy and I have done previously, and, you know, my let's say glowing recommendation, but, you know, from the horse's mouth, and you guys will be the horses in this case.
Well, if I may start, first thing first, which is very important to know, is that when you come to us at Kumankaya, we are in the middle of the jungle here, the Yucatan rain tropical forest. And so it's very important because the experience take a different perspective in this context. You know, the container, it's fully immersion in nature, and nature heals by itself. And so when you come here, you will be fully surrounded by the nature, and we provide a very safe and caring container in which the person is going to be administered the ayahuasca 4 times a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday night. That's our reason. And also, if someone comes to us and stay for a minimum of 10 days, we also provide a master plan diet. So just to give a little explanation about that, is that ayahuasca would be like the general doctor, the MD, family MD, the family doctor that everybody has. But sometimes this doctor needs to send us to a specialist to be able to perform a more precise work, a specialty. And so that's why when the person arrives here, the first ceremony in general is some kind of diagnose of what the person needs according to their intention, according to the private meeting we had with the person. And we provide after that a healing, additive healing than just the ayahuasca with some master plan that is going to help the person achieve their goal during the stay. And also here, it's a retreat center. As a retreat center, it's very calm. It's a meditative space. It's really, we have no city sound. We have a beautiful, non-polluted sky night, full of stars at night. And so that's also very important to understand that a retreat of ayahuasca here, as we provide it, is also a form of self, coming back to yourself, you know, and take time to just put things aside and just take care of yourself and think about life, you know. It's a meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just kind of add some more concrete details, I guess, to the process. Normally, whenever we begin the booking process, 2 weeks to a month in advance of the person's stay, I will forward a diet preparation. And this basically asks the guests to begin their process, which is start kind of honing down their intention, and then also start simplifying their dieting, start cleaning the food that they make. But what we're asking them as well is to think consciously, to start to act conscientiously, start to make choices, not to just react, and in preparation for the stay. So if people adhere to the diet guidelines and adhere to the process that we advise, in fact, their experience, their healing is much broader than just a stay at Kumankaya, right?
And it starts before.
Yeah. And it's also putting responsibility on the person, because when they leave Kumankaya, the sole responsibility is on the person. They have to actually make their healing at Kumankaya make a difference, right? It's going to be on them. And so this initiates kind of that expectation. And then we guide them through them while they're here. And then that also encourages that expectation when they leave here as well. And so upon arrival, we're a little bit different in the way that, as Remy had said, that like it's not a retreat center that you're entertained. There's not a whole lot of activities because the entire retreat center is catered towards the ayahuasca at night, the drinking the ayahuasca at night. And so we'll do some yoga and do some meditation. Sharing circles. There might be an activity. For instance, our guests today are going to a local cenote to go swimming. And so there might be some like little random activities, but for the most part during the week, it's everybody's resting, they're meditating, they're journaling. Either they're talking to us, our facilitators, and trying to process the ceremonies the night before and get the most out of the experience. And
you can also expect to have like private meetings with us. We are absolutely committed to the people here. And when they need some private meeting for some reason, we offer that, no problem. And so basically coming to visiting us from the airport, you've been taken care up to our center where you stay the whole time doing your ayahuasca experience, your healing experience, your self-discovery experience, and after brought back to the airport. Or sometimes some people take some few days in Tulum or Bacala around here just to have some kind of integration.
And to answer your other question, Daniel, what makes this really unique, I think, is that most retreat centers, you're brought into a center, which is kind of structured as a
little technical difficulties as Remy and Ashley are literally in the middle of a jungle. So Ashley, please resume where you were before.
Yep. So when you're taken to a retreat center, usually it's structured as the village concept, like you're brought into a village. But Kumankaya is differently. We try to do this a little bit differently, where you're coming into our home. My husband and I literally sleep upstairs to the main center of the house, or the main part of the house, the center. And so that way we're around all the time. You see us coming upstairs, downstairs, you're passing, we have lunch or dinner with you sometimes. There's not this huge distance between the guest and the healer, the guest and the patient. We're around for conversation, we're telling jokes. And that's one of the things that I think people really value about coming here, and also that you're brought into a community. When you come here, you're creating a community with us. So when you do leave, or I check in on the people. How are you doing? They can always reach out to us if they have any issues. Integration's not going so well. They have any questions about integration. And so it's not you come here and you leave and you never see people again. It's an ongoing relationship that your time at Kumankaya you're cultivating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would also add one thing, Daniel, is that so you might think, do I need ayahuasca?
Sure.
Or just out of curiosity. So I would say if you feel your life is stuck, blocked, if you feel depressed, if you have a lack of energy, if you feel that your social connections are not working well, if you are stuck in your romantic relationship, if you are stuck in general in your life and feeling blocked, emotionally, mentally blocked, yes, you need ayahuasca. You need to allow yourself to open up to this natural healing that the ayahuasca provides.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe just briefly, like I think it's important for people to know that like you guys built your place. Like, I mean, yes, you had help with professional, masonry people and electricians, and people should understand professionals did the hard, they did the work, but like you guys built the roads and you guys designed the layout of your home and of the the maloka, the sort of healing yurt, if you will, you know what I'm saying, and all the things. Like, just talk a little bit about maybe like the energy and intentionality that went into your place, that you guys bought virgin forest, and there was nothing there. I mean, not nothing, of course, there's nature and life and trees and fungus and everything that's there, but there wasn't this wasn't there. You guys put this there. I just maybe just for a minute or two, tell me a little bit about, or tell the audience a little bit about that process, because I find it to be not just fascinating but kind of inspiring. That like you talked about, like overcoming the sacred terror and like taking on this path as one that has priority in your life, and in doing so you had to create the space to do that, to give the opportunity for other people to create space in their life. You had to create space in your life physically by what fill in the blanks for me, because I don't know I know many details, but you guys did the work, not me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that that was the scariest thing that I've ever done in my life, because when we came here, talk about you're at the basics. You have no building, you have no running water,
No
electricity. And at that point, I was so terrified of insects, of nature. You still have that weird relationship with nature. And not only that, but that was on the very concrete level, right? That was on the very material level. But on the deeper levels, we just stripped away my titles, stripped away my purpose in life, stripped away like everything that up until that point had given me meaning, which constructed my identity, who I was. And so it was extremely terrifying year, really. For me, but I was for him, but at least for me, it was interesting too, because it was like for one of the first times in my life, or our life, where we were forced to walk the talk. We wanted to devote ourselves to the medicine. We wanted to devote ourselves to, trying to be our best selves, our highest selves. We wanted to devote ourselves to the spiritual path. And this is the first time, boots on the ground, where reality really hit us in the face of what that's going to look like. And that was really interesting. And so I guess, we built this center as we rebuilt ourselves. And I think you see that in the little nuances and the details. You see that in the intentional design of the architecture, which my husband designed every building on campus here. Everything is extremely intentionalized to kind of capture all aspects of who we are and who we wanted to be, and the type of life we wanted to live.
And also, to inspire us in doing so, as Ashley said, is that we've been to Peru many times, to many different centers in Peru, and we wanted to offer the people the experience of ayahuasca with enough comfort, if you want. I don't speak comfort like in a bad way, but enough safety so people can really relax into the experience, and the whole process because basically when you come here, it's almost like an entire ceremony from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave. That's the goal, creating a space that gives you the feeling of entering into a ceremonial space as you, and you will leave the ceremonial space when you leave here. Of course, you have the actual ceremonies throughout the week, but it's a spiritual space that the building and the atmosphere and the decoration and the beauty around has created to give you this safe container space of ceremonial attitude, if you want. And so doing so, because of our Peruvian experience, we created little bungalows around and on those little hills. It's almost like a little flying village around like that. And
It's even circular.
it's
like a
even
ceremony.
in a circle like that around the Maloka. And each bungalows, most of them, we have different modalities, but different bungalows has his own bathroom, his own toilet. So there's enough safety and enough comfort to be really, not to have, sometimes when you go to Peru, you have some kind of cultural shock. You go to
Yeah.
indigenous people, which is sometimes necessary. It's
Yeah.
absolutely necessary, but it's also important. Maybe the way we propose here, it's so basically the facilities, and now we have internet and everything. So basically, between the States or other countries, Europe and here, well, you find approximately the same type of living. The only difference is that is fully immersed into the deep jungle of the Yucatan, you know. But we wanted that, we designed that on a purpose.
Okay.
To provide
No.
enough safety for people.
And I could say that that's how it feels. You know, that's why I wanted to talk to that. I wanted you guys to talk about that, you know, in the roundabout way, because that, I think it's an important piece. You know, people are doing something maybe they've never done before or never done in this way. And it's important to know, I think, for people that like the experience is authentic, but the location and container that you guys created is authentic as well, authentic to you, you know, authentic to the way that you want to have people feel when they come to your space, and authentic, at least from my part, authentic in like that it feels not just real, but like tangible, because you're leaving your life, but you're not leaving it in some place that is so different that you can't say, oh, I'll never be able to get back to that again, because that place is so magical. And yes, it is magical, but it's also looks like a retreat center that you might do yoga at somewhere, or that you might, you know, go to a restaurant. They might have some beach vibes or something like that. Like it's still within the realm of possibility that place that you were at physically and emotionally where you were there can go with you back home. And I think sometimes, at least from my experience, people will say like, oh, you know, when I was visiting this place, that place is so magical, that's the only place I could feel that, you know. And to me, that's a defeatist view of things, because then that means that the limitations, the external mediators that you put on your own healing and self-development are so great that you'll never be able to get there again unless all of these requirements are met. And this is just adding length to the stick in front at the carrot, with the carrot at the end of it. You know, it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And therefore it's almost like, well, what's the purpose? If I can't do it there, then kind of what's the purpose? So
that's very important what you said, Daniel, because it's also the reason why we wanted to provide this container that we have here with those bungalows and those caring attitude that we have with the people. It's also because of the integration. If you come to a place, you do your experience and go back home, and there is such a gap in between, it's almost like it never happened.
Yes.
Or as you mentioned, it's exactly what you said. And so here we provide enough modernism, if you like. I mean, just to be safe enough and to be feeling comfortable enough. So you don't have the cultural shock that will be complicated when you're back home.
Yes.
And so, because as we always say, there is the work that we do here, but integration is the other half of the work when you're back home.
Yeah. And we talked about this in the last podcast in pretty good detail, the integration part. So for people who are more interested in hearing that conversation, if you haven't listened to the previous episode that we did with Remy, I think it's called like preparing the soil or tilling the soil or something like that. It says Kumankaya part 2. Anytime you guys come on, I'm going to put Kumankaya and then part. So this will be Kumankaya part 3, whatever it is that I will title it. I do have one thing I want to talk about for a few minutes, but we'll do that as kind of like the capper. Before we do that, is there anything else that I want to give you guys a minute to just say, other things to potential people who might be listening, or people who've, know you guys or know us, or, whatever, just the prospective audience of, participants for you guys. Is there something that we talked about that I didn't cover, or that we didn't get to, or that you guys want to mention? Now is a good time to just kind of have a hodgepodge, if you will, a smorgasbord.
I think we cover pretty much everything. The Kumankaya is a healing retreat center that works. We work with the ayahuasca, and master plants diet on the side, and we're fully dedicated to this healing and service to the people. That's what our life is about, and as crazy as it sounds, we enjoy doing
it. Great.
Ashley, you feel good? The administration, Ashley.
Yes. Thank you very much.
The admin. Okay, cool. All right. So there's one thing that came up here that I would love to talk about for the next however long, and then we can kind of wrap it up. So Ashley, it's funny because it comes. You mentioned it not in ceremony, but I'm going to mention it as a part of ceremony also. So you had mentioned that when you guys went down to Mexico and you were building the center, transforming the forest and building it up and things like this, that you had to both get rid of your identity, right? You had to shed your labels, because even during that process, yes, you're healers, or yes, you are a citizen of this and a wife of this and a son of this and a daughter of this, but actually for months or year and a half or however long it took, you were day laborers, but building a center. You were worker bees, and no one cares about your education. Nobody cares about the knowledge that you carry with you, how many books you've read. The job to do today is to cut down these next dozen trees and move these rocks out of the way and do that stuff. And I think for me, I just wanted to have a little bit of a dialogue around this idea of like the identity and how, you guys view working with the medicine as a challenge to that, and an opportunity to work with the core of who we are, which is our identity, right? Because there's a book in Carlos Castaneda. He has many books written by Carlos Castaneda, him and his teacher, Don Juan. But Don Juan says to Carlos Castaneda very regularly, you are the way you tell yourself you are. And so I think for, all of us, we all have different, some people are truck drivers or nannies, or I don't know, acupuncturists who listen to us, massage therapists. I don't know what people do, you know what I'm saying? But like, we have our identities. We're of Asian descent, we're of, Belgian descent, we're of Nigerian descent, wherever we're from. But all of these are pieces of who we are, or who we believe ourselves to be. And, I have had the, we'll say, awe-inspiring experiences of having much of that dissolve away, only to leave I'm not sure what. But I wanted to hear you guys talk about this, because this is a topic I find personally fascinating, and usually if I find it interesting, at least one other person will. So
for me, it's like I guess it's like I was very good at fulfilling roles. I was very good at being a teacher. I knew very clearly, think about administratively, I knew very clearly the rules. I knew very clearly the expectations, so I fulfilled that role. I fulfilled the role very well of being a sister and an aunt and a daughter. I understood the expectations. I fulfilled those roles. But when it came to the jungle, you take all those away and you realize that you are just good at fulfilling roles. You don't really, like, for me, I didn't really know who I was. And one of the first things that Remy had said to me was, okay, now you can be anything. What do you want to do? And it was the most terrifying question because I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I realized, like, up until that point, my identity was more of a composite of roles than it was of anything authentic, an authentic core, an authentic sense of self, and anything, a true essence of who I was. And so that was, I would say, and I kind of downplayed it earlier, like it was a good 2 years of
because she didn't even speak the language.
I didn't even speak the language. It's like the only person I could communicate with was my husband, you know, and so I wasn't able to talk. I had no friends, you know, everything was removed, and that was one of the interesting aspects. And luckily, you know, being in the jungle, there's such a heavy archetype, right, of being in the jungle, anyways, and you know, being in the jungle as well. Like, this is the first time in my life I had ever been given, I'll go back to it again, space to like really, you know, not be at service to somebody, do something, you know, to figure out a new role I could play or create a new role for myself to play, but to just have the space to like really look at myself and see that when I really look at myself, I don't really like very much who I am. I don't like this role. I'm sure I was a very efficient, very proficient professor. I was a very talented this or that. I was a very loving daughter. But when I look down at my truest self, there's not much substance. There's a little girl that wants a lot of attention and will throw a huge temper tantrum when she doesn't get one. Well, okay, let's start looking at this, you know, and that came about through time and space and isolation and being pulled out of my comfort zone. You know, being forced to carry blocks for a mile and a half, being forced to do this hard labor, being forced to be under duress, mental duress, emotional duress, physical duress, being forced to those kind of extremes to really start seeing these unexplored yet interesting elements of who I was, you know. I don't know if that makes sense.
And no, that's great. That's great. And if people are interested in that kind of a challenge, that could happen in one night too, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We weren't even drinking ayahuasca at that point.
That's what I'm saying, you know.
That can happen in 2 hours.
So we could, right. Yeah, no, that's great, actually. Thank you for sharing. And I love the fact that you spoke from that as a woman, you know, because I know that there are women who listen to this podcast, roughly 54% of our audience technically, who identify as that anyways, you know, who, you know, have their own experience with that. And I wanted to hear from you, as, you know, for a while, but coming on here as saying that, like, you know, and I don't want to say this, but like most of the people who come on retreat with us down to your guys' place and who do the work with this medicine, you know, are women. And it's from my experience, you know, from the stuff that I've led. And so, like, there's an amount, like, you know, we talk about like overcoming these fears and working through this various layers and blockages and so forth. But like, I think the idea of, like, you know, bravery or willing to stand up and or stand up in yourself or for yourself, or being curious to find out, you know, who it is that I am or why do I feel this way, isn't like the typical kind of archetypal, like, brave warrior with the spear and the, you know, and the sword. It's the, you know, it's the kind of like yogi who lets themselves be seen, you know, and looks for themselves inside. And
I would say also the work of a mother, you know.
Yeah.
To give herself fully to what's going to be born from her, but with no expectation. You know, just okay, I'm just at the service of someone else, you know. That makes sense?
Yeah. No, fully, like, letting yourself be fully, letting it go fully through you, you know, being completely part of it.
As you mentioned, we're kind of speaking to women, so if I may add a little caveat.
Sure.
You know, women especially are so ingrained to be at the service of others, to self-sacrifice, act selflessly, you know, for your children, and give everything, give yourself to your children and to your husband and to these different aspects of society. But I think that honestly, the greatest act of service is self-love and healing for a woman. Because if the personal tank, the spiritual tank, the self-love tank isn't full, there's nothing to give. There's no, you know, and that's how resentment gets built in. That's
Yes.
how disappointment,
Depression.
depression, failure comes in, is because women give too much from an empty source. And
Mm,
I remember thinking when I left my family, because I used to live very close proximity to my family, left my job, how I was being selfish. I was being selfish to decide to live my life on my own terms. It was an
mm,
act of being selfish, and only through my own healing did I realize that was the single greatest act of self-love I've ever done in my life.
mm.
Deciding to live my life on my own terms, and it's not just for me because I'm at the service of others, but to live it, to heal myself, to demand the space and the time to be my best self was the greatest act of self-love I could have ever given myself.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. I know my teacher, Andre, will say the greatest gift you can give to this world is to create an enlightened being, or to awaken an enlightened being, i.e. yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think,
Also in this way, Daniel, if I may just add
yeah,
that, also in this way, that's also something that many people have told us we never really realized. You know, when you practice something, we're both practitioners in the ayahuasca field, but is that we are she as a woman practitioner and as a man practitioner, we really provide the full service here, if I
yeah,
would say. In Peru, most it can be sometimes very masculine or very feminine, but to have both at the same time is not that common, in fact. And
mm-hmm,
so we are happy to be able to tell people, come here, you will have the feminine healing in the ayahuasca ceremony. You will have the masculine healing in the ayahuasca ceremony. So we are very happy to be able to propose that as a couple. You know?
mm-hmm. No, I
That's
agree.
also something that helps a lot of people. You know?
Yes, no, it's definitely something that people are appreciative of, I think, there's no doubt. No, that's great, guys. I definitely, that was that was good. That's what I was looking for. This is, this was perfect. Thank you guys for coming on and for sharing. There's a lot, there's more obviously that we could discuss in terms of like more specifics, and the medicine work and the changes you guys have seen with people and whatnot, but maybe we'll save that for a later
Part four.
conversation.
Yeah.
But
But Daniel, that's always a pleasure
Yeah, it's good to
yeah,
see you.
to see
no,
you and to
yeah,
be with you. And I hope that everybody will get something out of it. You know,
oh,
we're
they
very
will. They will for sure. No, there's some really good stuff in here. I know, you guys may not see it at the moment, but when you go back and listen to it, there's going to be there's a bunch of really good moments in here that I think can really kind of help a lot of people who are interested or curious about you guys, or just self-discovery in general, to be able to like fully give yourself into something, and in the process of doing that, allowing yourself to be sort of reborn, in that way. And the only other thing I wanted to add, Ashley, actually, before we go, so I don't forget, is you were talking about like being self-sacrificing, that women tend to self-sacrifice. And I agree with this completely, as having more women clients than not over the years. But I think it's also, if we could stretch it just a little bit, it's also, there is a personality type of people who are willing to self-sacrifice in general. And that to me transcends gender. And these people don't have the ability to kind of take that to prioritize their own healing, right? Whether that be male, female. And I think that by taking the leap and doing the work with you guys, or going to a retreat center, anywhere in general, but particularly with you guys, again, because I work with you and that's what we're talking about, it gives you a chance to not just to reset, like, oh, I'm going to hit this reset button and I'm going to be refreshed and I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before. No, that is not the purpose of this podcast. That is not the purpose of this conversation. That is not the purpose of my work in this life. And I don't think it is the purpose of your guys' work either, but is to take the opportunity to reflect upon the pieces of our character that are living within us unconsciously, that are fueling our actions and reactions, that are not yielding the greatest potential in our life that we believe that we deserve. And so by taking the time out and questioning these things and doing the self-discovery and diving into the mirror, if you will, like in the Matrix, that you give yourself the opportunity to awaken some of these latent parts of yourself, and then say, okay, is this what I want? And if the answer is no, then to change it and to deal with the fear of change. And that goes for lots of women actually, and I also think lots of, you know, people, men or wherever you are on the gender spectrum, who live a life of fulfilling expectations, not of their own, that they should. I should take this promotion. I should take this job. Why wouldn't I say yes to this thing? But in their heart of hearts, that doesn't resonate with them. That's just what they think they should be doing. And for me, this opportunity for people is one that is not of great length of time. You know, we're not saying go there for a year and you'll be different. No, it's go for a week, 2 weeks, 10 days, you know, do a master plan diet, whatever. You get that opportunity because of the depth and intensity of the work and of the container that you guys hold, and of your desire to help foster people through the treacherous kind of crossroads of making different choice. The opportunity that is there for people, I think, is great. And I hope that this conversation fuels people's curiosity, if not their call to action, if you will. Call to action.
I really do believe that you nailed it, Daniel. You know, it's to coming here is to push the pause button in our life and to be able to look at our life and see what type of human being we are,
Mm-hmm.
and what type of human being we want to be. And so by pushing this pause button, you know, to stop for a minute our lifestyle and those roles we're pulled in, you know, we're really able to sit on the side of the river of our life and look at its true orientation. Because when we are in the current of the river, in the modern life like that, we don't really see where our life is leading us.
Yeah.
And life doesn't make the best choice when we don't do our choices, you know. And so we have some time to push the button of the pause, sit on the side of the river, look at the orientation and see if it's a good one, or if we have to reorient a little bit. Who we want to be, what type of man, what type of woman I want to be for the rest of my life, you know.
I was wondering when we would talk about the directions in the shamanic space, and here it is that we ended with them. So, you know, talk about direction in your life, which is perfect. I think that's wonderful. Before I bid our dues here, guys, is there anything that you guys want to say in parting, or?
No, I want to say one thing. We have 2% of battery.
Say again.
We have 2% of battery.
Oh yeah, no, we're ending right now, so it's perfect. So thank you guys for coming on again. As always, you know, I love having you guys
Daniel,
here.
for having us. Thank you everybody for listening. We're really enjoying it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you guys are family to me. I love you guys so much. Thanks for making the time. For our audience, I will leave a link to their website that you can get a hold of them if you have any questions. Obviously for us, jinandtantra@gmail.com. Leave a link or comment or subscription in the YouTube video. Leave a like on the Apple Podcasts. If you want to get a hold of me or get a hold of them, I'll make that information available. For Eric, Ashley, and Remy, this is Daniel. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.